Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Hot Pursuit.
All right, we have a lot of people will be relieved that we have a guestless show today.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I don't know why we think they'll be relieved, but
well, I've been told by so many people that they like it better when there's no guest, even though you and I are always struggling to find a guest, because I guess for us, like, we know each other. I know your take on stuff because we text a lot,
Yes.
You know mine because I'm super loud. But I guess the listeners, occasionally like a break from an
we just like
guest.
a family will keep it close. Honestly, it's a lot easier for us.
One of the other things is I always forget to ask for emails. I always forget to promote our email address and tell people to write in. We do it often enough.
Well, we get really excited when there's a third. So it's natural that sometimes we forget to say the email.
But I'm going to remember today because we're actually on our docket is we're going to talk about some of the emails that we've gotten.
You've been heard, all of you.
Our email address, by the way, is hotpursuit@bloomberg.net. And I assure you that we read them and we take them very seriously. Sometimes our feelings are hurt. Sometimes we get excited.
Sometimes you're right and our feelings are hurt.
Sometimes, I pretty much always respond to someone who writes us emails. So
I will say if the sentences are pretty clear and the grammar is, at least 8th grade level, I will respond. Now, if it's just profanity and I have to read it 5 times to even make sense of it, I may not respond to that particular note. But if the thoughts are cohesive in general,
I'll tell you what, if it's angry, profane, and with horrible grammar, I'm more likely to respond.
I know that to be true. You will engage.
Yeah, my managers recently have told me not to engage on Twitter.
Oh, I was told that very early on, and it served me well.
And we're going to talk about some of the cars we're driving. Now, actually, these two things are the emails, at least one of the emails that we got and the cars that we're driving kind of dovetail. Because someone said that we can be elitist, maybe.
I think that was directed at me, really.
We'll get into it.
Yeah,
but
all right.
It is true that we always talk about these incredibly expensive cars. And to be honest, when I get a car that isn't very expensive and doesn't have a big, throbbing V8, I almost feel like not, talking too much about it. But I happen to have a car that's sort of decently affordable this week and I think is really good. I thought about skipping it because I didn't think anyone would be excited.
Is that because you're elitist?
Not because I'm elitist, but just because I didn't think, I spend so much time on YouTube looking at people's car reviews, and sometimes a dude will be reviewing like the latest Nissan Mersa or whatever. I don't even know if that's a car. And I'll be like, why did he feel compelled to even review this?
Right.
But sometimes they're really good.
Yeah.
And you have an affordable ride as well, right?
Oh,
right
completely.
Now.
I'm driving the Fiat 500e. It's a $34,000 electric car, and I've got a lot of thoughts on it. I am generally positive about it. I think it's cool.
Let's start with the 500e. I also have driven it. I don't know what color yours was. Mine was
black.
Red, which is, I think, the best color for it.
That's fine, but I also am really loving the black. It's kind of cool.
Oh, nice.
It's black with a white interior.
I'm seeing a black one on Car and Driver. I just wanted to double check the price because it seems like a lot of car for, in today's dollars, $34,000, right? When I was a kid, $34,000 would get you a sweet Audi, but no longer.
Yeah, this car actually, I was thinking the infotainment alone is better than what lots of luxury cars had just a few years ago. And this is, not really, it's a special thing, but I don't know if I would really call it a luxury car. But it has kind of everything you need and nothing you don't need.
We'll get into whether you would call it a luxury car or not later.
It's special. I'll say that it's special. First of all, I love the heritage. This is such a beloved make and model. I have to say I did visit the old Fiat factory and driving this really makes me, it feels like it's it is where it came from. It feels like it's this tiny car that came from Italy, and it does still carry sort of that feeling of Dolce Vita, and it has a certain charm about it that I really like. And it's of course very small. I certainly have gotten more people honking at me in this car in an angry way because I'm zipping in and out of traffic in this than the Corvette, than the Mercedes, than the Rolls Royce, and any other fancy thing, because this is so zippy and small, and it's electric, so it's really quick. And I'm all over the place in it, and it's actually pretty fun.
And you're more confident that you can make the gap, right?
Oh,
because
completely.
it's a short wheelbase.
It's half a car. It's half a car length. I do really think if you are going to drive an electric car, the world would be a better place if every electric car was this. Can you imagine?
It's true. I mean, you get the feeling that you could run over somebody and it would be okay. The car might just bounce off.
It's just a little love nudge.
I also thought at the time, your definition of luxury is a little different than mine. And I actually, last time we talked about this, you pointed out you think a luxury product should have, like, if it presents as wood, it should be real wood. And I think that's a really cool definition and handcrafted and all these things. I think you're right about that.
The heritage.
I tend to think about, I was just thinking of luxury as something that's like special and stands out. And definitely for this category, this car is special and stands out. Your other choices are like, the Chevy Spark, I don't know if they make that anymore. The Honda Fit, which isn't luxury,
No.
But this is, in terms of small cars, easily the most stylish and the one that you feel proudest of when you're driving.
Absolutely. And it comes from a very specific philosophy about life and about cars. And it looks similar to the generations that came before it. It's really drawing on decades of people, real people, working to develop and evolve this idea. Like, the car is an idea, and you can feel it when you're in the car. And to me, that is a special, cool thing. When I say if something is luxury or not, that's not a value judgment. That's not a character judgment. To me, that is simply a label, like you would put on any other things. I would certainly label this 500E as a very special, cool thing.
Right.
For sure. It's not necessarily a luxury car, but who cares?
No, you're saying like
car.
The way you would say it's round. You have a definition for round things, and it has to fulfill that definition.
Exactly.
Doesn't mean you care if something is round or not.
Yeah.
Or opaque or soft or I totally get what you're saying. This car is another of the recent electric vehicles I've driven where I'm shocked that the 0 to 60 time isn't as quick as I thought it would be. I'm looking it up again on Car and Driver, and I see 0 to 60 in 7.8 seconds, and I would have thought it's closer to 5. I was zipping all over the place in this vehicle.
I mean,
right?
Yeah, it feels really quick. It's not necessarily quick. And honestly, sometimes I kind of forget that I'm driving. It's not a golf cart level, but it's a couple steps.
No, that's why I think it feels like so much more special than other cars. It feels so much more. It feels like it should be so much more expensive because you're not comparing it to an Audi A8. You're not comparing it to a Corvette Stingray. You're not comparing it to a 911, obviously, or even a minivan or an SUV or whatever. It feels like its own class of vehicle, right?
It's not trying to be something else.
Yeah.
It is what it is. And I also have to say, I'm tall, you're tall. Obviously, the back seat is minimal, but the front two seats, there's lots of headroom. The visibility is awesome. Now, I will say the one thing that I hate about it is when you turn it on and off, there's this little jingle that sounds like a child's toy. I mean, it literally sounds like you're in Walmart and you're walking down the aisle of children's toys and they're going off. It's so annoying. I don't know why they put that in there. And it happens every time you turn the car on and off.
Well, it is kind of a toy,
so if I could take that
right?
away, So it may
definitely
be in
feels like
with
it. Look, I wouldn't get this. I mean, maybe some urbanite would, especially like a millennial or a Gen Z, get this as a main mode of transportation. For me, this would be like a third car, on the estate. On more of like a esoteric level, I've thought
I can't drive this because people won't take me seriously if I pull up in this.
Oh, we need to see a shrink.
You know?
I think you're probably right. I probably feel the same way, but I need to then reevaluate my life.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's a me problem.
The cool thing is it has decent range, like 150 miles, right?
Yeah.
I charged this thing up. I charged it up from like 0 to 96 when I had to hand it back in, and it took me way less than an hour.
Way less than the Hummer?
The Hummer. I mean, but that's a totally different size of battery pack, right? I mean, the Hummer has I think a
like
210 kilowatt battery pack. And this thing is going to be more like 50. But it's just easy to live with. And you're right. I'm 6'3", 200 pounds, and I fit in it with no problems whatsoever. The tech feels like up to date and super intuitive.
No complaints.
So I liked it as well. I wonder if you get the $7,500 tax credit, because if you do, and then New York has another $2,000, so that's basically another $10,000 off. You could get this thing for $25,000 large.
Yeah, that's about the price of a motorcycle.
Well, a good motorcycle, right? I mean, you could get a KTM 1390 Super Duke for that.
Ooh.
I am driving another Stellantis product right now that totally reminded me of like a big version of this, or more so an Alfa Romeo. So I'm driving a Dodge Hornet, the 2024 Dodge Hornet.
Oh,
and
interesting.
I have a special place in my heart for Mopar, as you know. So I guess when I get in, I'm already kind of liking it a little bit because it's Dodge, but it's not obviously a V8 or a big cop car or a Durango. It's a pretty small SUV, but it's got a ton of room in the front for me. Certainly enough that I am very comfortable. It's super zippy because I'm driving the hybrid model. It has the electric pickup aspect.
It's a mild hybrid, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a plug-in hybrid.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh.
It also has great tech. I mean, obviously they're the same company, so they're using kind of the same tech. But I thought, man, this really feels like an Alfa Romeo, and then I dug a little deeper and found that it uses the exact same powertrain as the Alfa Romeo Tonale, and they're built on the same, obviously, platform. So it's basically like an Alfa Romeo Tonale. I would definitely get this instead of the Alfa.
Just because you like an American label?
Well, also because it's a lot cheaper than the Alfa, about $10,000 less. So I guess if you're really a badge snob, which I've heard recently that would be a great name for a podcast, maybe for us.
Oh.
Badge snobs. Then I guess you need the Alfa, especially if you're you want everyone to know you're a car person, because
I actually like the look of the Alfa too.
The Alfa,
I thought it looked pretty.
I guess, but I would try not to be a badge snob, and I also don't subscribe to the theory that every true lover of cars has owned an Alfa Romeo at some point in her or his life.
You know what?
Is that a Clarkson line? That's a Jeremy Clarkson line, I think.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I have to say, I went to a friend's studio on Monday evening, and he had 5 red Alfa Romeos from the 60s lined up in that studio. This is in Vernon, which is sort of an industrial section of Los Angeles. And we went out for a little ride. This was a 67 Alfa Romeo. And you know what?
Wait, the person had 5 Alfa Romeos in a studio?
Yes.
So in New York, that would mean a one-room apartment. What is a studio in LA?
A big studio warehouse.
I see.
It's his art studio. He's an artist. It's his art studio. He's got
apparently
a big warehouse.
A successful artist.
Yes, he is. These are really nice cars. But I felt a little bad because he is very excited about them and loves them, and they are cool. But for whatever reason, Alphas just have never been my thing. And when we went out driving in this, little cute Alfa Romeo 1967, I couldn't help but be thinking of all the air-cooled 911s from that same era that I've been in and driven that were just better.
Yeah.
But
also far more expensive, right? Because the thing about an Alfa is you can get one for easily project car prices.
These were around the one that we were in particular was, I think, probably around $50,000. Some of the others that he had there were a lot more expensive. But at the time, I think they were comparably priced. 911s at the time were, if you just got a little Carrera, that wasn't an expensive car necessarily. But
Man, if I could go back in time and get a Carrera for MSRP.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I know.
Or anything.
But I don't know. Are you really an Alfa guy?
I'm not. I'll tell you what. I will say that I do love the Alfa Romeo Giulia, and doesn't even have to be a Quadrifoglio. I have a huge amount of respect for someone who buys that rather than a BMW 3 Series. Because you're taking the road less traveled. Certainly in America, you are. And
we're definitely thinking different.
I've read incredible reviews about it. I haven't driven it, but I'm sure it's amazing. So I like the new Alphas. I just don't have a soft spot in my heart for the old ones, which is what the kids, like the collectors, want the old ones. I think Clarkson wasn't talking about a new Alfa Romeo.
No,
he was talking about the old ones.
These are classics. And the people who have them, at least in Los Angeles, I'm friends with a couple of them. They're obsessed. They love them. They think everyone, they're ahead of the game. They're smarter than everyone because they are picking up on something that I admittedly am not picking up on. I don't necessarily get it. I'd rather have an old Corvette. But,
me too.
But the people who love them.
We're super American, Hannah.
Yeah.
And we're proud of that. So this Dodge Hornet that I drove has a 1.3 liter inline four.
That sounds small.
I know, but it doesn't feel that small because it's got the electric assist to combine for 288 horsepower. And it's not a big vehicle, 0 to 60 in 5.5 seconds. But again, I would have thought just driving it, before reading the stats that it was faster. So my seat of the pants dyno feels the boost, and it does have a boost. It'll temporarily give you an extra 30 horsepower if you use the power shot, which is what they call it when you pull on both paddle shifters. And by the way, if you're driving a small family SUV and you're pulling both paddle shifters for a power shot,
wow,
that's a very Dodge thing.
I have a power shot every morning, with breakfast.
I just thought it was a really fun car, and it isn't that inexpensive for a Dodge Hornet. You would expect to be able to save a lot of money by buying that, but it starts at like $45,000 and goes up from there. So I configured one on the internet myself and got to like 55, which is a pretty solid price.
What do you think about this whole sort of reusing old names from the past with new cars? Because when you first said Dodge Hornet, I immediately thought AMC Hornet. Yeah. And now I'm already down the road thinking about, the old Hornets from the 70s.
And there's a lot of people, especially Mopar fans, who get angry about this.
Yeah, I would get a little.
I don't
confusing.
mind it. I mean, I understand why sort of purists, historians, collectors would be unhappy about it. I don't care.
You don't find it confusing?
No, because I'm not buying like 60s or 70s cars very often.
Yeah.
And I like the Mopar of today. Didn't like, if you talk to me about 60s or 70s muscle cars, I'm pretty much thinking about like a Mustang,
a
Camaro, maybe a Firebird. You have to get really into it before you start thinking about, the Challenger and Charger beyond the Dukes of Hazzard car. Like, they've only become recently such big deals, right? I mean, the Barracuda was huge then and is huge now, but for the intervening 40 years, I don't think anyone talked about it.
Yeah, and so not a big deal. Like, basically for you, hey, the world has changed, we're in a new regime, a new paradigm.
I like using the old stuff on new products, even if they're a little bit different. For the most part, there are some instances where, for example, I can't stand the fact that that Ford calls the Mach-E Mustang a Mustang.
Well, I was going to bring that up.
Nuts.
That also seems like a misnomer. And then we go down the road of, and I think we've spoken about this, but why are you calling an electric vehicle a turbo?
I hate that. And Porsche, by the way, is the first company that I saw doing that.
Of course.
With the Taycan.
And then it's like, well, does any word mean anything? Does anyone remember laughter?
Yes.
It's like words mean nothing. Okay, I guess we're just calling whatever we want now for anything. Even calling, sport coupes, like BMW with their sport coupes that are four-door cars. Even that, I'm like,
nothing is as bad as using the wrong numbers. right? So
For instance,
if a BMW, it used to be a 325, it meant that it had a 2.5 liter motor in it. But now if you get a BMW, say a 540, it doesn't anymore mean that there's a 4-liter V8.
Right.
It probably still has a 3-liter inline 6.
Right.
And I think that's just really too misleading.
I mean, it would be nice if there were a correlation, if only because then it would be logical and you could kind of just look at the name of something and know what it is.
Yeah.
Now, maybe not necessarily.
No. But I will say, just to put a bow on it, we liked those 2 Stellantis inexpensive. I mean, I find it hard to say a $45,000 vehicle is inexpensive, but they're not
mass-produced
vehicles. Yeah. I will say that I'm also driving right now, or just picked up this morning, a Ram truck. Okay. And it's the first time I've driven a Ram truck. They don't have V8s anymore. So it's got none.
Wow.
So it's got the Hurricane inline 6 that I've been so bullish on over the past few months. And I did really like that motor in some other configurations. For example, I drove it in a Jeep that I thought was really great. But when I get into this big Ram truck that I'm driving right now, and I don't feel the warmth or the vibes, the size, you can feel a V8, and I don't feel that. It's just too disappointing for me to accept.
That's fair.
And I don't know if that's because I'm a redneck, that I'm from the great state of Ohio. Like me and JD Vance, when we drive pickup trucks, they have to have V8s in them.
Has he said that?
I don't think he's said that yet.
Is that on his platform?
And no. I mean, and also, even if he doesn't think that now, he could think it next year because his views change that much. But
yes, well,
I don't want to get too political here. The point is, an American an American pickup truck needs to have a V8. And I've always been unhappy with Ford shifting down to the EcoBoost, especially for the Raptor. I don't think it's forgivable for Ram. It's even less forgivable for Ram because at least, Bill Ford is like a Sierra Club guy.
Yeah.
Mopar is supposed to be polluting.
I don't know if I can get on board with that, but I will say at this point, I don't think that the V8 will never come back for the Ram. Now, I am not following what's happening in Ram truck world as close as I am in other worlds, but I have to say, I've noticed among supercars and higher end cars that people are now putting in V12s and even V16s back into cars. So I kind of wonder, for a while I thought, okay, everyone's trying to do the 4-cylinder with the hybrid and they're downsizing on the engines. But there could be the beginnings of a swing in the other direction.
The pendulum swingeth back.
Yes. What do you think about that idea?
I don't know. I mean, it's only when you get to the rarefied air of like 200,000 or more.
Could those be leading indicators? And the other segments then follow along?
I don't think so, because take the Jeep Wrangler, for example. You can get a V8 in the Jeep Wrangler. Ford, take note, right? But the problem is it's going to cost you $100,000 to buy a Jeep Wrangler.
Yeah.
And I think that's just all about regulations. Now, speaking of JD Vance, who knows if the next administration just axes those regulations.
This is what I'm saying.
We've already seen the Supreme Court neuter the EPA in a sense.
Yes.
But I don't think I don't think we're going back. I think that for me to want a V8 or a 12 or a 16, I can still feel like maybe I'm the one buying that and you guys are all buying Fiat 500Es. When Jim Farley puts out a V8, or if he ever wanted to make something bigger, he has to think about the fact that hopefully, for a good business case, tens of thousands of people are going to get them. And then he can't sleep as well because he's really contributing to global warming, right?
So maybe the higher count cylinder engines are really status symbols as we go forward. They remain.
Now, your point, the point you always make, I think, is a good one. It's not that you can't buy a V10 anymore. You can. You just can't buy one new.
Sure.
There's no way to buy a production car new with a V10 now.
And
ever since the end of the Lamborghini Huracan,
Yep.
It's over.
Yeah. Although, you know what? We should talk about this because, speaking of Lamborghini, this company called Eccentrica just announced that they hired Maurizio Reggiani, the former head of engineering at Lamborghini, to be a consultant for their car in doing a Restomod V-12 Countach. Did you see this story?
I did. But
yeah.
It's
an expensive vehicle.
And also, it's the kind of company that I think you don't like very much, right?
Correct. I knew you were going to say that, and I wasn't going to bring it up myself, but you're 100% correct.
When they go out and rebuild a dream vehicle, just making it better and easier to use and faster and safer.
I'm eating my own words right now. I look forward to evaluating the car in person in Monterey in August. I will be on site and doing a deep dive with the physical car that they assure me is drivable in August. So I will be very excited to report back. And obviously I'm skeptical, but I have to say what disarmed me with this particular instance, because they had emailed me multiple times to try to get me to cover the company, and I basically ignored them. When they told me Reggiani was on board, that's when I started talking to them. And that's the truth.
Well, by the way,
because he is really, really well respected.
Yeah, well, but the thing is, I always say about Revology that I have extra respect and admiration for the company because they brought in who was in charge of SVT for Ford. So if he's going to be making, if anyone's going to be making a Ford Mustang, I guess Restomod isn't the right word for it because they're just building a new car from scratch. But I trust Tom and Revology to do it. In terms of Eccentrica, which I hadn't heard about until Laura Butler.
Neither had I.
Laura Butler did an Instagram video about some kind of beefed up Lambo that they put out. Aren't they building a Diablo, or is it the Countach?
Oh, sorry. Did I say Countach?
Yes.
Strike that. It's the Diablo. It's the V-12 Diablo from 90.
To me,
from 1990.
That's even cooler, right?
Yeah.
Because the Countach is like everybody now wants the Countach, and the Diablo
that must have been on my mind.
Is the
it's
one.
Diablo.
Like, I guess it's my age. I'm 50. Of course, I thought the Countach was amazing when I was a kid. But by the time I got to high school and my road and track came on a regular basis, it was the Diablo that was on the cover. So that was like, my era really is the Diablo era, not the Countach era. So I think it's pretty cool that they're rebuilding that. How much, though, is it going to cost? I mean,
it's 1.3 million euro, and they're only making 19.
All right.
And this is why we get accused of being elitist. My goal with sharing this information is that I think a lot of people kind of want to know what's going on. Just like you say, the Diablo is a poster car, the Countach is a poster car. Not me, other people grew up idolizing these cars. You're just interested to know, and it's really fun to dream. It's really fun to imagine. I think dreaming is so important. I dream about things, it's obviously this stuff is aspirational. Neither you nor I can afford it, but it's really fun to know about and to talk about and to imagine if we won the lottery, this is what we would buy. Yeah.
If I could go back in time and buy Bitcoin for $75 a piece, which is what I should have done at the time, then I will definitely buy one of Eccentrica's new Diablos. Speaking of talking about cars that no one can afford, should we get to the emails?
Yeah, let's get
now?
to the emails.
Because we got an email. We'll use first names, right? Because I don't want to,
no, we're not trying to air anyone out.
I'm not trying to dox anybody, but we got an email from David.
Yes.
Who is someone who I think it started listening and maybe was turned off, but he's hopefully going to come back.
Yes, or maybe Diego. He did sign the email Diego, but the email address was David.
Well, now you've outed him. Because if somebody knows a guy whose nickname is Diego, but they happen to know his birth name is David, or would it be the other way around? I don't
figure
know.
either we're first names only.
I love the subject header because it says, enjoy your podcast, but... ... And I was like, oh man, I'm going to open this one. And
I know. I got to wait to get a coffee first.
To be fair, we get more critical emails about me Because I'm so excited about stuff and I talk over you all the time and I'm kind of a bulldozer.
I have to say, first off, I really agree with a couple points in this email. And one of the number one point that I agree with is that Matt Miller is our best on-air talent and is very beloved and really one of the shining stars of Bloomberg. And thank you for making that point. And you're so right. And, he's a delight to work with and everyone does just adore him. So you're 100% correct on that.
So kind. We have such amazing on-air talent. I wouldn't put myself in that
company.
But
I do love Carol and Tim as well.
Yes.
They're the best.
So his email, the idea is you and I were having this discussion about whether the new Corvette can be classed as a supercar. And I think not only is it a supercar, but I think it's better than the other supercars out there. We're not talking about hypercars. We're not talking about Pagani or Koenigsegg or even Bugatti, but I think compared to the Ferraris and the Lamborghinis in its class, the Corvette can keep up, if not beat them around a track, and it's more affordable. So for me, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Okay, here's a counterpoint. A supercar, by my definition and by most definition, must be a superlative luxury car. It must have always been conceived and designed since its beginning and since its inception as the superlative. A Corvette is a mass-produced, affordable V8 that is commonly known as America's sports car. That is how it was conceived. And that is how it continues today. Now, I do agree, yes, it can keep up with performance cars from Ferrari and Lamborghini, but the mark of a supercar is not simply performance. If that was the case, we could throw a Tesla Model S in there too, because a Tesla Model S can keep up. It's just as fast as Ferraris and Lamborghinis. And I would also say not every Ferrari and Lamborghini is a supercar either. But that's really where my argument comes down to. And I would say, again, this is not a value judgment. It's not a mark on how great I think the Corvette is. I'm a Corvette owner. I do love Corvettes. This is a performance-oriented sports car.
Okay.
Which is how it has been conceived and how it remains.
So I'll just interpret. First, I'll say there are TSLA freaks who would say that it's a supercar. And
that the Tesla's a supercar?
If you're someone who thinks that, please don't email us, because I don't even want to talk about that.
You can email me, because I got a lot of thoughts.
But so you're saying that it's got to be conceived from Gen 1 as a supercar. You don't think that if GM says, listen, we're going to keep the name Corvette, this is going to still be called a Corvette, but we're going to change things to the extent that for the first time ever, we're going to move the engine from the front of the car to behind the driver. And we're going to make it like a flat plane crank, like a Ferrari, but even better, because it's going to be 5.5 liters. And I mean, Corvette has done so many things on this vehicle that they hadn't done for the first 7 generations that I feel like it could be a completely different product.
They're wonderful, and they certainly have enhanced the performance. And that's wonderful. And, one argument that our friend made in his email, too, was that Corvettes are far more reliable than Ferraris and Lamborghinis, which we'll give you the benefit of the doubt if they are. Again, reliability is not a mark of a supercar. In fact, it's often the
so wait,
opposite
you're saying
and the
a
inverse.
Supercar has to be unreliable.
No, I'm not saying that, but
Okay.
I'm just saying calling the Corvette reliable doesn't make it a supercar.
Also, the jury's
it's a
still
wonderful
out.
performance car. It's America's sports car. I mean, this is how it's always been known.
The jury's still out on the Z06 motor, right? Because those things shake like crazy. And
Yes.
But
And
I think it's important to point out that it could also be better build quality. There are a lot of Ferraris and Lamborghinis that roll off the line where the suede starts to peel, or
Matt, you don't know that.
Yes,
you forfeited your right to critique when you said that you have not driven a Ferrari.
Well, I mean, I have driven an FF And
that counts.
I did take, I had that one for a week. I did take Sergio's LaFerrari for a spin around his own personal car, the parking lot.
Was the leather peeling on those?
No, but if I read about, for example, the sticky buttons when the 308 went to a 328, right? Like even though I haven't driven a Magnum PI Ferrari, I've spent dozens of hours reading about them. And so, you just know that the build quality on some of these vehicles isn't perfect. I've spent a lot of time in Lamborghinis. It's my favorite brand of car, and yet I know
I love Lamborghini.
That the build quality just isn't quite there.
Oh, it's far better than a lot of automakers I can list.
Well, this C8 Corvette that I spent a week in was very good in terms of build quality. That's
wonderful. Again, that's wonderful. Not every Ferrari is a supercar, I would say.
Okay.
As you mentioned 308, I've owned and driven a 308. My husband owned it. I've driven it. That's not a supercar. And again, that's not a knock on the car. It's fun. It's a fun car. I will say this. You are right, David/Diego. I might be elite. That may be true. Because I do believe that some cars are better than others. I do believe that cars should be beautiful. I want cars to feel special. I want them to be well made. And I don't think those things necessarily have to be expensive.
Okay.
Unfortunately, sometimes they are. But I don't think they have to be. I think everybody deserves to have things that are beautiful and well made and fun.
Okay, well, I'll just say, please write in with your take on whether or not a Corvette is a supercar. Our email is hotpursuit@bloomberg.net. Moving on to the next email. Christopher writes in and says, the subject header, your interaction. And I knew what this was going to say. I'll just read a short piece of it. I'm sure Matt's obvious enthusiasm is unforced, but it does lead to him talking over Hannah and interrupting her. This is particularly notable when Hannah is saying something more substantive, and it does occur much too often for me. I will say that my wife says the same thing, and she listens to all of our podcasts. And I hate that I do it. I know that I do it, and I hate that I do it. And I don't know why. There's something inside me that just has to always come out.
Because you're enthusiastic.
Yeah.
You're passionate. I don't blame you for it. There are people who have told me I need to interject more and I need to butt in more. That's not necessarily my style. I'm not a screamer. And I'm a journalist, so my natural instinct is to just ask questions and listen, which is great, but it doesn't always make for great podcasting. So, I think it doesn't bother me. Maybe, I don't know how you feel about it. I should probably interject more. I just don't like interrupting people.
I mean, it bothers me because when I thought about doing this podcast, the whole idea was I would interview Hannah. So anyway, I'll try and stop it. I'm trying already.
Don't go changing. I mean, your enthusiasm and passion for everything is so, people love it. I mean, that's what makes you great. I'm more reserved anyway.
Okay. All right. We got an email from Doug.
Yes.
And I
about
immediately,
wagons.
I knew I was going to love it. It says wagon race, ! By the way, I use exclamation points a lot, maybe too much.
I don't think it's wrong, colloquially.
I mean, I'm excited about stuff. He says, I've been loving my Taycan Cross Turismo a lot. I would argue that even though it's a full EV, it has soul and looks and drives awesome.
Cool. Awesome. Love it. And I love the double exclamation mark in that email. I'm looking at it right now.
I think, man, I would love to drive a Taycan Cross Turismo, especially the Cross Turismo, which I think is way better looking than the original, which is already pretty handsome.
Right. I had that a few years ago and thought it was awesome. Like, make more of them.
Yeah. So we're with you, Doug. We like that vehicle. And the only sort of debatable point is he says it has soul. And definitely from the design standpoint, it has soul, especially the wagon, right? Mm-hmm. Does it have soul to drive an electric vehicle like that?
Look, if Doug says that it does for him, I will never say that his experience is not valid. His experience is his experience. For me, I don't know if I would say that EVs have soul. I know Porsche's tagline for its EVs are soul electrified. I've joked that it's actually soul electrocuted. So I don't know if I would say that, but I'm not going to quibble with Doug about how much he loves his wagon because it's obviously evoking a reaction, emotion. So, if you equate soul with some sort of emotional attachment, there you go.
So he says maybe we should do a show about just the top ICE wagons. I think we could throw electric ones in there too. He mentions a few examples, the Merc, AMG,
Yes.
Audi Avant, Volvo
Audis.
XC. Yeah, the first car I ever bought with my own money was a 2001 Audi A4 Avant 2.5 TDI
Love.
with a stick. And
Love. Wait, is that the one you crashed?
No.
Okay. Okay.
I had that for a few years in Germany, so I got to drive it on the Autobahn. Like I said, it's a TDI, so it didn't have a super high top speed, but I was regularly downhill. I could get it 220 kilometers an hour.
Wow.
And then I moved to London, so I had to sell it. But it was, I think, one of the best cars. I've had.
I'm often asked, why don't automakers make more wagons? And I don't really have a good answer for that other than whenever I ask them, they tell me no one buys them.
Yeah.
But it's like every car person and every rider for Jalopnik wants more wagons, and I guess maybe we need to talk to more people. But
By the way, the first performance car I ever drove as a kid was an Audi RS2.
oh, that's cool.
A buddy of mine had one. A buddy of my father's had one in Cologne, and he let me drive that, which was...
So that would have been in the 90s or the 80s?
Yep, in the 90s.
Wow, that's pretty early in Audi's, evolution too.
And then one of the coolest racy wagons was the RS6 in Layer Cake. Have you seen that?
No. Oh, yes, because you told me to watch it.
Yeah.
That is a very cool film.
It's like
I
my
love the style.
favorite kind of gangster movie or
Yes.
British gangster movie. And
Daniel Craig.
Daniel Craig, and he's driving the RS6 down the old
Yeah.
English road, and they're blasting the Cult in
He's
the background.
The best. I mean, God love him.
And then I think the ultimate is the BMW M3 wagon, which they
Sure.
keep kind of teasing us with and not really delivering on.
I don't get it. I truly don't understand that. That's a big question mark that no one has an answer for.
All right, it's a good idea. We
Yeah.
should do a whole piece on wagons. I got to find out who would be the best guest for that.
Ooh.
Jonathan writes in, and he's writing in from Hong Kong, and he
Yes.
points out that, and we've mentioned this before, you can't import to the United States any new vehicle that was built for a market outside the U.S. unless it's 25 years old or older. And
I think you can, but you also have to bring them up to
Spec.
modern
Yeah.
emissions and safety standards, which is expensive, complicated, time-consuming, not fun.
It takes forever. You've got to also get it checked out and from at least two different regulators, and neither
It's
one of
a
them has an
mess.
appointment for a year.
It's like dealing with contractors.
Yeah, it's almost impossible. But he points out this is cool because it opens up the market in the U.S. for 90s JDMs, right? They're past
Yes.
that point.
Yes, and this reminded me of a story I did on microvans that are being brought over from Japan. And, this is a couple years old. I have my friend Pelly in Oregon who worked for Nike at the time, was importing some vans, some Toyota vans, and we got to talking. And there's a real culture. I know, Jonathan, you didn't necessarily say vans, but it's interesting because I remember when I was working on that story, Haggerty said that more than 90% of the quotes they get on these sort of JDM type vehicles are from people who are under 35. So it's cool. People are getting excited about that.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, my neighbor, whom I always talk about here, he loves the supercars, right? His latest thing is maybe a Huracan, or
Cool.
he's got the M4 GTS, which is, I think, an underappreciated supercar, but he seems interested in JDMs too, and I think he's 34 or something.
That's cool. I think a lot of that is probably also driven by video games, because on the car side, there's so many cars, I'm told, and I sort of see peripherally, that are in video games. So people grow up driving them virtually and become obsessed with them.
I don't personally understand the appeal. I don't even have any kind of attraction to Godzilla, the Nissan, what's it, the Nissan GTR?
Yes.
But there's only one Japanese car that I would want
Which is it?
in this country, and it's the Suzuki Jimny.
I don't even know what that is.
It's like a baby G-Class.
Oh, cool.
I highly recommend you check it out.
Oh, I know what that is. Super cool.
It's awesome. I've driven one in Europe, and
Cool.
they come in bright, fun colors, and they're just sweet little vehicles. I don't think you can
I feel
buy
like
one
your
in the
daughters
US.
would love this.
Yeah, it'd be what a sweet high school car that would be.
Yeah. I've seen like one of these once in LA. They're kind of rare.
Yeah, I don't know why Suzuki doesn't make more and sell them here, because I think it would be a slam dunk.
Oh, that'd be so cool. Super cool.
In any
Because
case,
you know what? You see a bunch of like Resto Mod Broncos and stuff, but this is actually cooler.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we will get more of those in the U.S. In any case, we should probably focus in a little bit more on JDMs. I just don't know very much about it myself.
Yeah, honestly, same. But that's a really good reminder that we need to broaden our scope, potentially.
Yeah. So if you have any suggestions or questions or criticisms, please email us at hotpursuit@bloomberg.net, and we will make sure to answer you.
Yeah, we love hearing from you. Thanks for all of your input. Update on the car with the trunk that didn't open.
Yeah.
That's still actually in play.
Oh, that's
I don't.
the Rolls Royce.
Yeah.
Which one is it?
It's a Silver Spur.
A Silver Spur.
I'm not gonna say too much about it because it's still in play.
So
but
it's still a potential.
I might have an update next week.
That's pretty cool, but it's not really the one you were looking for, right?
It's not the Camargue.
Yeah, that's the one.
It's not the Camargue. This kind of looks like a cross between a Silver Shadow and a Camargue. It's like the bridge between the two.
Oh, to be a member of the Beverly Hills Car Club. Imagine the vehicles you get to drive. I wonder what the wait list is. Do you have to have a certain number of...
There's no club. No? Anyone can walk in off the street. Can and does.
All right, well, that does it for us. This week we'll be back same time, same place next week. I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Bloomberg.